Today on WebDM, I'm going to give Jim Davis a bit of a rubdown, and he'll hopefully answer 3 questions on genies. So we're talking about genies today. And before we get to the actual genies, I want you to walk me through, in 5th edition, how do you summon a genie if you just wanted to summon one?
If you just wanted to summon one. All right, so first off, you can't do it with a conjure elemental spell because the CR of genies puts that out of reach. So you have to use gate. Well, in order to use gate, you have to know the genie's name. Right. And you can imagine that any genie worth his salt is going to keep its name out of the spell books and grimoires and tomes of wizards and such. So we're talking legend lore. We're talking maybe having to go to places like Candlekeep Library or whatever the equivalent is in your game world and find books of genie names. Right. So multiple legend lores, which are already cryptic and poetic to begin with, to figure out what the genie's name is. Then you've got the genie's name. Now you're ready to cast a gate for it. Well, the gate needs to have a magic circle prepared for it.
Right.
Magic circle, inwardly focused, will somewhat, but not guaranteed, prevent the genie from, say, teleporting out or walking out. It can still make ranged attacks across the barrier, so you're going to want like a force cage or a wall of force to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And you probably, just to be sure, just to be extra sure, you want the people involved in the ritual to have their own protection from evil on them individually, which will help prevent any kind of shenanigans that the genie might have getting out. So you've got your gate, you've summoned it forth. Really the first thing you want to do is use a bestow curse to nail its charisma save. That's the first thing you really want to do. And hopefully you've got a lore bard there who can shave off a bit of its saving throw to make that bestow curse stick. Then you've got it trapped in a magic circle. You've surrounded that magic circle with a force cage or a wall of force. And then you start your planar binding spell, which is going to take an hour, during which that time I expect the genie will do everything it can to make life miserable for you. If it's capable of creating sensory effects outside of its magic circle, like illusions, things like that, it probably will. I would imagine genies immediately go gaseous form. So that it's difficult to target them, that kind of thing. So you need like 6 or 7 spells.
Yeah, by my count I have 7.
Yeah,
do all of those.
If you do all of those. And some of them are overkill. Maybe you don't need the bestow curse, but you might want it.
It certainly helps.
It's certainly going to help. You definitely need multiple high-level casting slots. So
how many of those are concentration?
Casting and summoning and binding used to be, like, say, in 3rd edition, which I kind of see as the height of being able to summon things with the Malconvoker's prestige class and just sort of the real sort of shenanigans you could get up to with high-level summoning. Now summoning is something the whole party has to get in on. You need multiple casters. It's a group effort. You better have your warrior types there protecting the wizards in case that genie gets out. And even a CR 11 genie is going to be enough trouble for a higher tier caster that you don't want them just running amok. Once you've summoned them. So it turns genie summoning into an adventure. But it is weird because the monster manual makes all this reference about genies being bound and summoned and used by other people, and some genies are okay with that and some genies aren't. And it really made me think, like, how exactly do you summon a genie and bind it to you? And it's a lot of work. It's an adventure in and of itself, which I think is appropriate. It turns it into something that you have to prepare for, that you can't just casually do on a whim. That summoning a genie into the world is a big deal.
Whether you went through all that trouble, all those spells, or you just found a lamp or whatever.
Just found a lamp,
What do you get for your efforts? Walk me through the genies.
So the genies, there's going to be 4 of them, obviously bound up around the 4 elements. And so in a lot of ways, the genies are the pinnacle of elemental creatures. They are on their home planes. They are the nobility, the rulers, the aristocracy that sort of govern the societies that exist on the 4 elemental planes. Whether we're talking the Ifrit from the City of Brass, or the Dao from the Great Dismal Delve and the City of Jewels, or even the Marids in their City of 10,000 Pearls. The Djinn don't seem to have any one central location, which kind of befits the air theme. It's just sort of free-flowing.
More ephemeral.
But each of those, you want to be sure, go read the section on the inner planes in the DMG. What's there? What are some of the locations that are going to be around there? And then just let your mind go from there. If it's the City of Brass, then there's going to be all sorts of fire-related creatures there. If it's one of the air the airplane's plane of air, rather. It's going to be like, say, a floating rock with a, it might look more like, what was it, Mario Galaxy, where you kind of like jump on the spheres.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it looks kind of like that, where each one has its own individual gravity, even if they might be a little smaller. But in terms of the genies themselves, creatures that are sort of mid-range in power, some of them are quite tough and resourceful. Almost all of them, they're not going to come alone. They've got elementals that they can summon with them, wide range of defensive and sort of utilitarian powers. And if it's a noble Djinn, then obviously you get those wishes that it can perform for you, which is the whole point of summoning them in the first place.
Right. I want that wish.
Those wishes. Right. In terms of like encounters and things, I can see the more Earth-themed genies, the Tao. They've got a lot of interesting defensive abilities. They're really actually, despite their low speed, very mobile. So I can imagine a fight with them is it pops up under the ground. Your first bruiser trips them up, hits them, and then uses the fact that they can travel through the ground to hit the more squishier party member to avoid attacks of opportunity and really maintain their mobility, all while keeping things like gargoyles, dust mephits, earth elementals, things like that to kind of keep the party members occupied while it sort of like trips prone and hammers away at those characters that are still on the ground. So obviously party members might want to be flying to avoid the worst of his attacks, but then that just puts you in the range of the gargoyles and mephits that he should, that genie should be coming with. So that's kind of more of the earth themed. I mean, for the others, for the genie, they're mobile. They're very, you should really play up the fact that they're flying creatures. So you might want to consider, reread the flying rules. How do they interact with each other? What does it look like whenever that genie summons a whirlwind under someone and hurls them off the ever-present and proverbial cliff that seems to be in so many of these encounters?
There's always a cliff. Everybody wants to throw someone off a cliff.
Well, this genie is perfect, is very well suited to doing it, because it just sort of like lifts you up in the whirlwind, throws you away. But use the fact that it's highly mobile, 90 feet of fly speed. The fact that it can make 3 different attacks, it should be sort of like zipping all over the place, never really knowing where and when a party member is going to be hit. And then, of course, if you wanted to kind of increase the power level of a Djinn, you could give it like a hurl lightning ability, similar to the Nefrit, or even the mobility feat that would make it even more of a...
Jim, that extra 10 feet of movement would just be game breaking.
It would just be game breaking, absolutely. It's too much. 10 feet of movement is absolutely too much. But play up the fact that there's fly speed, that they're in 3-dimensional environments, and that they would use that to their advantage. And then for the others, for the Ifrit, I kind of find them the most boring of all for the genies at this point.
Oh, yeah.
What I want to do with them is use their enlarge ability and their wall of fire ability at the same time. So maybe DMs say, you know what, he's a monster, screw the concentration mechanics, it's going to do what it wants to do, and concentration is for players only. Some players might not like it. It might make for a more interesting encounter as this sort of giant-sized genie holds its grappled opponents in the wall of fire.
Yeah.
If you're going to want to stick with the rules...
Or stands his ground inside of a circular wall of fire.
That's what I'm saying.
Enlarged.
Yeah, enlarged. So you maybe say, if you want to stick with the rules and have it obey or abide by the concentration mechanics, maybe it has an inwardly focused wall of fire that it stands in the middle of. Of course, in that case, it's not going to be as mobile, and you can sort of like stay outside of that range and peg it. Or maybe you switch out the wall of fire for fire shield, and you switch up some of the spell-like abilities that it has to give it that mobility that it needs, but also make being near it very dangerous.
Well, it should be.
It should be. It is a creature of fire. One of the things that I find the most interesting about the Ifrit is that in older editions of the game, they could grant fire immunity to creatures that they bring to the plane of fire with them. So it serves as kind of a way for lower level parties to explore the plane of fire without having to worry about being burned alive or immolated or something like that.
Yeah.
So are the party members slaves to the Ifrit, which I've certainly done to you guys a couple of times. You get dragged off to the city of brass as slaves.
You love it.
Maybe they are there as emissaries or agents of the Ifrit, working for or against them in some capacity. The Marids are one of those where if you're fighting them in the water, don't get out as quickly as possible. If you're fighting them out of the water or away from the source of their element, you're going to have a bigger advantage against them. But for the most part, they should come with mermen and tritons and all sorts of sea creatures in their entourages, and really use the fact that they can control the water and move about it. Yes, to sort of control the battlefield and have their minions fight for them. That's kind of like from a game perspective how I see the 3 genie or the 4 genies being really played out.
So, I mean, you mentioned a couple things with the Ifrit, like, but what are some more like working these genies into the campaign other than just a lamp and you rub it?
Yeah.
But what if, you know, maybe there's some conditions on getting your wishes? Or, I don't know. What do you, how do you see, you know, working these into a campaign other than just a random monster that, oh, you're in the plane of fire, you come across a genie, now you got to fight it?
I really do think that the lamp, the genie in the lamp trope or idea is really interesting for lower level parties. Number one, it gives them access to a wish that is difficult. You know, say finding a genie with inside of a lamp somewhere in a pile of treasure. And, you know, first off, are you going to allow each party member to take possession of that genie once, and then you're doubling or tripling or quadrupling the number of wishes that are at play at that moment? Do you say, well, that genie's only able to grant a certain number of wishes a year to a different person? So a DM's going to want to figure out how the wish mechanic would work for a bound genie, so that it's not just that the party passes the genie around after they're done with it.
And you got, you know,
each of them getting, you know,
9 to 12 wishes.
Right, exactly.
I don't know, I would probably do it just like the genie can grant 3 wishes in its entire existence.
In its entire existence.
And it's already done too.
Yeah, something like that. And, you know, maybe it needs to return to the elemental plane in order to
be recharged. Which, that would be a whole other adventure.
That's a whole other adventure. Maybe it's, you know, being in possession of the lamp is a, you know, something that can only be attuned to once a year, something like that. There are different ways that you can limit the number of wishes, but at the same time, you've given the party access to a wish or the ability to have multiple wishes that they wouldn't have, that they're going to, you know, normally the only time you're reliably getting that is at level 16 and above, or sorry, 17 above. But here we're looking at, you know, what does the party do with a wish? Yeah. Or what if they just have 3 wishes in their pocket? If they're smart, they save them for things that they really need.
Yeah.
Which is what you guys have done in similar situations when I've given you access to genies and lamps.
Yeah, well, we had the one campaign where our producer, editor, shooter extraordinaire was playing a thief that was making liberal use of his thieving ability.
Yes.
And some of the other members of the party grew a tad jealous.
Tad jealous of that, yeah.
So they find this genie, and he constructs a lawyer-proof wish, like sequestered in another room, and constructs this lawyer-proof document of how to take away all of Crow's.
All of his stuff.
All of his stuff.
And
but there's always a counterbalance, which was the Lady Fate.
Yeah, Lady Fate. Yeah, you know, I mean, there's a lot of that particular use of a wish was a little vindictive. But there's other wishes I'm thinking of like the sand trap in the dungeon where the tomb is filling up with sand. You guys can't pass the strength check to reopen the door.
Yep, there was that one.
And so it's just like you don't want to use the wish, but it's that or your characters are buried in sand.
And dead.
So
always keep a wish in your back pocket if
you have a wish, and I guess this would be my advice to players. If you have a wish, either from a luck blade or a deck of many things or a genie that you found, hold on to it.
Yeah.
Most of the things you're tempted to wish for, you can get through just working at it.
Yeah, most things.
Most things. But you might want to say, make sure that enemy is really dead. And after you've killed them, you wish them dead. Or you have an inescapable trap that you need to get out of. Those are the kinds of things you want to keep a wish in your back pocket.
Keep that in your back pocket.
Yeah.
The more you know.
The more you know. A variant of that is having, say, an Ifrit in an iron flask. In which case it's like that Ifrit is not going to want to, it's going to try to actively pervert your wish.
Yeah.
Whereas a Djinn might say, yeah, I'll grant this wish, but they're kind of flighty and whimsical. Who knows what they're going to do? And Ifrit is
they might get something wrong by
they might get something
because
wrong.
They just
they're
don't
careless
because they're aloof.
Right. They don't care. It's not that important to them. The finer points of the details don't matter. Whereas an Ifrit is actively trying to pervert your wish and make it a burden as opposed to
more of a monkey's paw.
Very much a monkey's paw situation. That's a real burden on DMs. And so I think it's perfectly within the DM's rights when a wish is in play to say, all right, hold up. Let's hit the pause button. I need to think this through. I am not a super intelligent ultra genius who can pervert these things. I need some time to think about this.
Right.
And so maybe if you're a player who plans on using a wish, that you give your DM plenty of lead time. You let them know, hey, I plan on using this wish today. Here's what I'd like to do with it. And it might be something that takes downtime to fully play out. And so in one session, the player says, this is what I wish for, and then it gets resolved in the next session.
Right.
If that's the kind of twisting of the wording that you really want to do. Some DMs don't let their players write down what they want to say, and they just have to say it.
They have to say it right out.
They just have to say it right then and there.
They can talk it out, but...
Yeah. So those are the different ways to handle the wish, and I think that particular aspect of genies is really interesting. So if I was going to throw an Ifrit and an Iron Flask at the party at 5th level, you just be like, yep, there he is.
It's pretty mean.
You can do whatever you want with him. You got 3 wishes. He's going to try to pervert them. And if possible, hates you for doing that, and you've made an enemy. And so it's kind of like a cursed treasure in that way.
I want to be the most badass fighter ever. Okay, he does that, and now everyone everywhere in the world wants to take you down.
Wants to take you down.
You're constantly under siege.
Yeah.
You can't even sleep at night.
Can't even sleep at night. Who knows what kind of, maybe he turns you into a monster itself. There's a lot of different ways.
Turns you into the Tarrasque.
Turns you into the Tarrasque.
You're the most badass fighter ever.
But also your character sheet. All right. So those are the kinds of things you can do. I can see, obviously planar travel is on the cards when you've got genies. Maybe the characters are bound servants or sort of sworn swords to genies, and they are in their service for some limited period of time in exchange for a benefit.
Right.
I think a noble genie makes a great patron for a warlock.
Oh yeah.
And you want to retool maybe the Fiend Pact, or maybe even invent a whole new pact, so that you can have a warlock who draws their power from their genie patron. Those are the kinds of things that I would use genies for in an adventure. By the time the players are traveling the planes with any regularity, what you really want to do is flesh out what the genie politics look like. If they're going to the inner planes, DMs owe it to themselves to kind of give it some thought. Who are the major players? What do they do? And work genies into the equation.
Okay, so that's genies. But we didn't talk about any of the other elementals, so...
Well, we'll get to elementals next time.
You promise?
I promise. I promise.